little backstory how I got into SF and Macvsog. When I was oddly enough originally drafted, and during processing, I went in to a room where they gave you options, and there was a great big guy standing behind the fellow who had the files and wearing odd looking fatigues, which turned out to be jungle fatigues, rare thing to be seen then in the US. And he reached over the guy's shoulder and he plucked my file out of his hand and said, "I want to talk to this man when you're done with it." And my first thought was, what did I do wrong? How did I screw up? So anyway, it turned out it was a briefing for, there was probably about 30 or 40 of us in the room. It was a briefing about special forces, which I happen to know a little bit, having seen something on TV about them earlier in the 60s. So it was an opportunity to choose to try and qualify for SF. So I went ahead and said yes. About half the room walked out when they were told they had to be airborne, and the rest did later on. So myself and one other guy took the test, and I was the only one that passed. But early on, I originally was a 12B, a combat engineer, and my early training went to Bragg and trained as a 05B, a radio operator, which I wasn't too happy about, but that's okay. Got through that and was assigned to the third group, which was kind of a non-starter because the third group at the time was responsible for Africa. And in those days, there were so many mercenaries running around Africa that they didn't need any special forces people because we came with too many strings attached. So, in fact, the only thing I can recall us doing in Africa was when they had a famine in Biafra, we sent some medical teams down, and that was about it. But, and I ended up in the headquarters company because somebody found out I could type. And I was cooling my heels there, trying to figure a way to get out. And the sergeant major called us in, about 8 of us, I guess it was. And he said, "I've got some good news and I've got some bad news." And the third group at this point was starting to wind down, right? They were starting to break it up. So he said, "I've got some good news and some bad news." He said, "The good news is you're all going to Vietnam." He said, "The bad news," he said, "Good, you're going to MACV-SOG." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "You'll find out." And so from that point on, I was going all over the place asking people, "What's MACV-SOG? Anybody ever hear of MACV-SOG?" Somebody told me, said, "Go up to the photo shop and talk to Chief." He was there. So I went up to see Chief, and I said to him, I said, what do you know about MACV-SOG? He said, "Why?" Yeah, I said, "Because I got orders to go there."
Oh.
He said, "Oh." He said, "Well, tell them you want to go to the Central Highlands." And that was the only thing he'd tell me. He said, "Don't go to the Delta. Tell them you want to go to the Central Highlands." I said, "Okay." So when I went to Vietnam, I was in a long line of SF guys amongst a whole bunch of others. And some kid in some leg, or I don't know what unit he was in, he had a pistol. And he was afraid the MPs were going to catch him with it. So one of the SF guys, I forget who it was, bought it off of him for some ridiculous amount of money. And when we walked through, they said, "You got anything?" And everybody just looked, no, and they let us walk right through.
Of course.
So when we got to Vietnam, I went over to the train, went to the sergeant major, and he had a big whiteboard behind him. And he said, "I see you're an 05B. He said, "I've got quite a number of slots on A teams all over the place." And I said, by this time I really wanted to find out what MACV-SOG was. So I said, "I think I'll go to MACV-SOG." And he said, "Oh," he said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Well, the Highlands." So he said, "Okay." And they put me on a plane to Khartoum. And we got there, and C-130, and the thing came to a rolling stop on the ramp. Briefly, the ramp came down on the back of the plane. They threw our bags off, told us to get off, and took off, right? And because they didn't like hanging around on the airstrip.
No.
And so we're standing there, and some guy was sitting over in a Jeep with his feet up on the wheel, and he said, "You guys going to Macvsog?" We said, "Yeah." He said, "Hop in." So we went on. It was about noontime. He dropped us off in front of the flagpole. And he said, "Well, first sergeant in here," and, everything was closed down for lunch. And I was sitting there under the flagpole, and Jeff May and a couple other guys came walking by and saw me, and we'd all gone through training together. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I don't know. I just got here." He said, "Well, we're going to lunch. You come with us." And
Wow.
So I went with him. He said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I have no idea." He said, "Well, tell them you want Recon." He said, "That's where everybody is." I said, "Okay." So when I went in to see the first sergeant, again, he had a big whiteboard behind him with slots on it. He said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'll do Recon." He said, "Are you sure about that?" I said, "Yeah, that's where all my friends are." He said, "Okay."
Wow.
He said, "Remember," he said, "you can always change your mind," which is something the sergeant major in the training had also told me. He said, when I told him I wanted to go to MACV, he said, "Well, remember, you can always change your mind." And so I thought, well, that's kind of odd. And so anyway, I got assigned to Recon Company. I went down for the briefing, and down in the underground talk that we had at the time, and before it got blown up later on. And they had these walls with these big red curtains, floor to ceiling, top secret across them. And they threw them back, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, where's Vietnam? Because it was all Laos and Cambodia, North Vietnam. And that's when I started to get an inkling of what MACV-SOG was about. But my first team was RT Arizona with Newman Ruff, who was quite a character. Mike Wilson, Newman Ruff, Finish. What was that kid's name? I can't remember one kid's name. Anyway, ran with him for a good while. And then RT Texas, Bill Spurgeon, knew he was leaving not too long, and he was looking around. So I got tapped to come over and backfill him and kind of a overlap transition, so that I knew the team, worked with the team for a while, been in the field with the team. And then when Bill left, I just became the 1-0. So, and that's Bill there with a headband on. Let me see here. I'm over there with the other headband and the sunglasses. That's Woody up there, up top. That's Nace down here. Peo sitting right by me over to him, Roland Peo. He was the 0-1, the Montagnard equivalent of the 1-0, right? Good team. And so anyway, I took over as 1-0. I think I had one of the first all Montagnard teams. I took it to Halo school and got everybody Halo qualified. Ran a good few missions. I got injured doing Halo at one point, prepping for a mission. And so I was laid up for a while. They medevaced me to, what was it, Long Binh hospital there, and they tried to medevac me from there. And I called MACV-SOG headquarters in Saigon, and they sent a major and two NCOs out, and they spirited me out of the hospital, put me on a Blackbird, and sent me back to Khartoum. And I became the operations sergeant for a while in the Recon company. And by the time I was able to get around again and back in shape, I went back to Long Ton and made a jump just to once you fall off the horse, you got to get back
Gotta
up,
get
kind
back
of
on.
thing. And then I became a bit of a floating 1-0, ran with RT Wyoming.
Oh, wow.
And that was kind of it at the time. Joe Walker, Emmett Dover, and I put together a thing called the CRP, Combat Recon Platoon, which was designed as to recover POWs or do short raids on specific targets. And it was our 3 teams plus a headquarters element and a medical element. And the reason it came about was because after Sante, we were saying we would get reports of prisoner camps, but we had no real specific ability to do anything about it. So that was what we organized this for. And we had a mortar section, and it was pretty heavy duty. And we had Air Force SOS, I think it was 20th SOS choppers, the dual engine turbo choppers were our support element, and pretty good. That's Emmett Dover down on the lower right. That's Paul Houchin, I believe, up there standing there.
This says this is during the CRP time frame. That I don't know if it is, but the book or label under the picture says this is a CRP era.
Yeah, it was the idea was the Air Force would either put us on top of a POW camp or next to it, and then we would drive to the camp. Casualties would be left while the medics treated them. We'd pick them up on the way back out. The only thing we carried was weapons and ammo and medical stuff, obviously. And so it was meant to be a hard-hitting, fast-moving, no time on the ground, to speak of kind of thing. Hours as opposed to days, and if that even that long. And I remember some brass came up. We went out to the yard camp, and some brass came up from Saigon to watch a demonstration. And one guy said, "I wouldn't put a reinforced infantry company against that group."